Okay, hello. We're going to start the actual lecture portion of the class now. This is video 2 on March 18th for Political Science 310. Much of the material for this lecture is taken from a book called Predisposed. Last week, one of your fellow students presented this book as their book review in class. John Hibbing is kind of the leader in political biology, and I actually studied with his son, Matt Hibbing. I had a class that was entirely devoted to political biology with his son, he's now doing a lot of research with. John and Matt are working together on a lot of things. So that's kind of where this lecture is from and kind of my own background with it. So when we think about political behavior, we tend to think about it in some of the ways that we've talked about in class already. We tend to think about like demographics, where we look at gender identity, race, age, education, economic status, and all of those things. And so we'll say, women voted for Hillary, men voted for Trump, whites voted for Trump, underrepresented minorities voted for Hillary. And we can look at geographic regions, we can look at age, we can look at wealth status and all of that. That was a whole lecture, so I don't need to go over it, but that is a big chunk of what traditional political behavior is. Another thing that we look at are things like structure. How does the media influence political behavior? How do voting systems influence it? How about access to voting? How does that limit people's participation? Then the next thing we do is we look at issues. How does the economy influence who's elected? For instance, a month ago, the odds makers were saying that Trump was going to get reelected because the economy was good. Now that the coronavirus has hit, the economy has kind of fallen apart. And that has lowered Trump's chances of being reelected dramatically. And so that is one way we look at it, is through those kind of issues. Social issues like abortion can be real wedge issues in determining people's votes and people's turnout. Things like foreign policy, when we're at war, people behave differently than when we're not in a major conflict, etc. So those are the kind of traditional determinants of political behavior. But there are always, in any field, new developments. And these new developments in general, not specifically political biology, but new developments in general, give us different ways of looking at politics. They help us explain things that traditional behavior either can't explain or challenges the explanations that traditional political behavior has come up with, and shows why it's wrong. The other thing about political biology is that it allows us to look at people as individuals rather than as members of demographic groups. And so there is a considerable amount of variation even within the groups. So women voted for Hillary more than they voted for Trump, but there's still a significant number of women who voted for Trump. There is and demographic breakdowns don't explain it all. Black women, for instance, are overwhelmingly Democratic, but Condoleezza Rice is a Republican. If you think back to that, is this person a Republican or a Democrat activity, where we went through and it was a blank. It was a stick figure, and then it was a female stick figure, and then it was a female conservative Christian white with children stick figure, that particular lesson. And when we got to the end, we determined that this person most likely voted Republican. But then I put up a slide that showed that Hillary Clinton and Sarah Palin both fit the exact profile that I had showed you. One thing that that political biology allows us to do is maybe differentiate beyond those demographic factors and find out why Hillary Clinton is liberal and Sarah Palin is conservative, which we can then apply to voters itself. One of the cautions with this, though, is that this is a very young field. So when we compare the results to the results we get, say, from demographic studies, the demographic studies have a ton of data that has been developed over time, and there's been a ton of analysis of that data. And there have been things that traditional political behavior people have gotten wrong and have taken some time to correct. Um, the new methods, like political biology, they're under construction, and that means they're messier. And when you are studying something for the first time, it is not uncommon for you to kind of wander down a research path that turns out to be a dead end, or the initial promise isn't, it doesn't, the results don't deliver on the initial promise or whatever. So when you see this stuff and you go, nah, that's not, I don't quite buy that. That's natural, because, in research, it takes a while to kind of develop the processes and the systems that'll get results. And Political behavior, the subfield of political behavior has looked to psychology in the past. This is not the first time around that they're looking at psychology, but looking at biology and biological research methodology is a fairly new thing. And when we think about something like Darwin and the origin of the species, when we look at that book, almost everything Darwin said has proven to be wrong. However, in writing The Origin of the Species, he set up a new way of studying. And now you can't have modern biology without evolution, without. So, what Darwin did, it wasn't so much that he got every part of evolution right. Everybody else has just been refining his ideas. No, a lot of his initial conclusions were incorrect, but in refining the ideas and finding new directions, we found things that were absolutely essential in developing biology, which is essential in developing medicine, et cetera. So keep that in mind. And then another kind of issue is there's going to be kind of an ick factor in all of this. You probably think that you have free will and that you are a Republican or you are a Democrat or you're undecided or green or whatever, because of kinds of things that are intrinsically motivated. And they may be intrinsically motivated, but they may be intrinsically motivated by your genetics and not by your thought process. That is a very difficult thing for people to swallow. So to the extent that you can, reserve judgment on this set of lectures until you get to the end. And then even once you've completed this, and if you've written that this is all a bunch of nonsense, which some of you will, and that's okay, as you kind of look at things as developments over the next few years, kind of come back to this lecture on and try and understand kind of how this subfield is developing, and what kind of radical implications it could have on politics going forward. Okay, so your next step is to take a couple of online quizzes. I don't need to see the results. I only need to see kind of how you feel about the results, how you feel about having taken the test, and how you feel about whether or not the results kind of aligned with what you believe about yourself. So go on and take the quizzes, and I'll see you back in a couple of steps.